Today we're going to show you how to use OBS with a green screen and a camera to get a better background effect than with Zoom or Teams and their virtual background feature. This video is geared towards beginners, those who have never used this software before. I'm not a streamer or gamer. I use this for professional use all day, and I wanted to share with you how to set this up, as some have asked for this. So OBS is a free software. I'll put the link in the description. And as we go through this tutorial, you can follow along, download the software. And what I want you to focus on to begin with here is this is what your software will look like. This is like a clean install. We have nothing configured yet, so you should be able to follow this step by step. This black square or rectangle here is the preview window, and you will see that things become evident in the preview window as we go along. Down here in the lower left-hand corner is a scenes box, and then for each scene you create in here, you can have multiple different sources. So I'll briefly explain that. That means that you could have different cameras, and if they had a different scene, you could use different cameras. Maybe your scene is one that's for work, and then you have a scene that's created for some personal use. So you could have multiple scenes as you get more comfortable with this. But for now, let's just talk about this one scene that's the default. And then the only other thing here are the controls that I want you to focus on too. So there's start streaming, which we're not going to use. Start recording you could use if you want to record a video. Start virtual camera, and some other things here. But right now we're going to keep this simple and basic. So let's start with the scene. First of all, this scene is called scene. So let's rename it to something more useful. I'm going to say Zoom call. So I'm creating this for a Zoom call. Now, I have no sources yet for my Zoom call scene, so I'm going to add a source in this box here. So I hit the plus button, and you get some options. We're going to focus in on this one right here. It looks like a little camera. So we assume that you have a webcam built into your computer, or you have an external one. I have the Razer Kaio Pro, and it's an external camera, which I really like. And I am going to just rename it that for the sake of knowing which camera I have plugged in. So here I am. Now, this is basically the screen for configuring your device within OBS. The first thing we're going to do is go to the system configuration for the video camera. So I hit configure video. I'll bring this screen in. And what you see here is a whole bunch of selections, brightness, contrast, so forth, that you can adjust for your camera. Now I've already unticked the box, but you may see this auto setup under white balance. And I have found that by not having the auto selected, you can have more consistent results for your white balance. So we're going to uncheck this box if you haven't done that already. You just want to uncheck that and kind of adjust it to where you see it looks good. And now my camera has decided to go out of focus. I think my autofocus, there. So you can adjust the white balance. You can see it does change the coloring. I found that somewhere in the high 3000s works pretty good for my lighting situation. And I'll show you a video of my setup, but I have a large light box in front of me just above my monitor and a small lamp on the desk with a little bit of a softer color scheme. And of course, if you're in the United States, 60 Hertz is what you want here. So that's all I'm going to adjust. All I'm going to suggest is you uncheck the white balance box, make a slight adjustment, see where it looks good, and then hit apply. Okay. So here we are, back to the configuration. I recommend highly checking this box, deactivate when not showing. That will basically deactivate your camera anytime you're in a scene that doesn't use that camera, or anytime you're not really using that scene in OBS. And it just makes it easier too to actually toggle the camera if you need it to just sort of turn off and on again. And I'll show you a little bit about that too. Next one, resolution, frames per second type. So you can go with the default. I don't know if you noticed, but the box behind here is actually kind of small and it's almost square. So I'm going to go to custom, and I am actually going to select my own resolution in the next box down. I tend to go with the full amount of resolution. Now you see it's quite different. I fill the entire preview box. All right. I'm going to go ahead and select my frames per second as 30. My camera will do up to 60, but I think most cameras are around 30. Video format, I'll take any. I do tend to check this box with color range being full. And I've seen a little bit better effect with that. Can't tell you why, not an expert here, but I'm just showing you to follow the settings, okay? So we're not going to worry about this so much, but there's a capture audio, and we're going to just leave it at the defaults. Then we click OK. So here we are. So you notice right away, I get the green screen positioned as far to this wall as I can make it. And this isn't going to work so good. I got some pictures on the wall here that I got to crop out. So let's first talk about cropping. This red line that you see around the window can be adjusted. So I can adjust the size. I can go bigger than the window to zoom in and out. So I could do, there's one thing I could do is I could make my face big and slide myself around so that that's out of the way. That's one way to handle that. So you'd click, hold the button and drag. If you're novice to this, you know you can basically resize this to fit, and it sort of snaps. It's kind of nice. It snaps to the window, so you don't have to figure that out. The other thing too is if you hold down the Alt key on your computer, and once that Alt key is held down, you click and drag the sidebars in. You notice it changed color. So this is actually a crop feature. So when you see this light green line, that means you've cropped the actual view. So I could literally go with this. I'm still centered up sort of in the frame. You'll see how this works when we go to the next steps here. Okay, so I've cropped out the part that doesn't, so this is the part that shows my wall is out of the video, can't be seen. Now I just need to filter out the green screen, right? Now, one thing that I have learned with green screens is that lighting is key. And so the better the lighting, the more consistent the lighting is across the screen, the better. If you look at my green screen, I don't have any wrinkles that are visible, but you do see that there's some darkness at this side, up in the corner, right? This looks a little darker if you look at the pitch than some of the other areas. And that's what becomes problematic with the green screen, because literally you're trying to filter out a range of greens, and as you get too far outside of that range of greens, you start making yourself disappear. So you're trying to get this just right. All right, so let's go back down here to the sources. So we have the camera. If I right click on the camera, we get a menu that pops up. We're gonna go to filters, okay? So here's the screen with me in the green screen. Now you notice the cropping is gone because that has to do with how the final product looks. This is just kind of the raw camera input. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the plus here on effect filters, and I want the chroma key. So, and I'm going to leave it just chroma key, okay? Now you notice as soon as I selected the chroma key, my green screen disappeared, and that is what we want. If you look at the preview, if I pull this down, you can see me, and you can't see the background. So almost perfect right out of the gate. Now that's a bonus because there are some adjustments and some things you can do to tweak, and we'll talk about that. The two main things you want to adjust in the chroma key are your similarity and your smoothness. Now think about this. Each of these adjustments, as they go higher, will broaden the colors that are removed. And I'll show you. So right here, it's good to remember these defaults. You can always click defaults and go back, but it's good to remember where you started and then just so you have a starting point. So we're at 400 in this box. If I take my similarity up, you start to notice that parts of the edges of my head are starting to disappear and fade, and pretty soon I can make my whole body just fade away. So 400 is good. If I go too far down, you see the screen start to come back, right? So you're trying to filter out all the shades of green that are on that screen. So we'll go back to the default. Similarity and smoothness. Those are the two you're going to want to mess with. Generally, these don't help much. Now I also add in a color correction filter. And for me, my face tends to look red a lot in certain lighting, and I use the hue shift to adjust that, so I can just tone it down just a bit if I want. Okay. Now remember that when you put filters or effects in, both in this sources box and here, you need to kind of think of this as though they're layered. All right, so the chroma key is actually being put into effect first, and then the color correction comes in after. So if you were looking at it, the chroma key would be back here and then the color correction, right? So it's a layered approach. If I did the color correction first, it could affect the chroma key's ability to chroma out the chroma, or filter out the key color, right? So now the reason I say that is that I'm going to show you another little trick that'll help to adjust. If your chroma doesn't filter out the green screen like mine did, we're going to do something else here. So if you notice there's a little eyeball next to each of these, if you click the eyeball, it basically turns off the filter. So there I am back to the kind of the raw view. So I'm going to add in this case a third filter, and I'm going to call it chroma key custom, because it's going to be custom. All right, now you notice it's in the layer approach, it's in the wrong place for me personally. I always want my chroma key before my color correction. Now I'm going to turn this off, and you'll see why in a second. So it's here. I'm in the configuration for this filter because it's highlighted on this side. There's choices, right? You can filter out green, blue, magenta, and then there's custom. So you notice there's a key color here. It's a real bright looking green, and there's a button that says select color. So this one, I can actually select a color. Now I'm going to move this off just a little bit. And what you can do here is you can pick any color you want to be the key color you're trying to filter out. Now I could guess and try to see what looks close to the background, but there's this nice little thing called pick screen color. If I click on that, wherever my cursor lands, I will be able to put in that exact color. Now you see, even just varying across this screen will change what that color is. So I generally try to look for sort of a midpoint, somewhere in the screen where it's not the lightest and not the darkest, and then just go with that color. Click the button, you see the little plus goes away. This is the color I picked. I click OK. Now let's see how we did. I turn on the chroma key custom. Oh, I'm gone. This is pretty common, right? So I take my similarity. Actually, I'm going to take my smoothness all the way down to 1. And then I'm going to take my similarity and I'm going to back it off. And you see me appearing. Things are coming back into play. Okay, so that's about right on the edge at 100, and let's go with 100. I could adjust the similarity up a little bit to take some of the edges maybe, but we'll see. That's probably about where I want to go. And then I bring in the color correction filter back on again, and let's leave it at that. So here I am. Not bad. You can see my chair. I'm well lit. You can't see the screen behind me. I have a little bit of green on the edges. That gets to be challenging to filter out. And but for by and large, this is going to be much better than your virtual background. Your arms don't disappear when you're in here. You see a pretty crisp look. You see a little bit of green in there, but it's not too bad. All right. Now, I'm going to bring in a background. So let's bring in, I'm going to just drag 2 photos in here. The other way to do this is you can actually hit the plus button like we did before and hit image. And then you can type in what your image is and then just search for it on your computer and bring it in. Or you can drag and drop your images in here. Now if you notice, these are some free ones I found from IKEA, which are kind of cool, but now I disappeared. Again, let's go back to this whole layer concept, right? These are done in layers, and I have my backgrounds above or in front of my camera view. So I can drag and drop these. I can bring my camera back to the top, and there I am. Now I'm in the forefront, and the background's in the background. Now one thing that you're going to want to do, because this preview window can get a little funky when you're trying to adjust things, is once you've lined up where you want your camera to be and how you want it to look, there's a little lock here that you can toggle to kind of lock it in place and so you don't actually move it around. So I'm going to make myself slightly bigger, move myself to the center, and then I'm going to lock myself down. Boom. So now that window won't be adjustable anymore by mistake because there's really no undo button here. I'm also going to go back and I'm going to switch to the standard chroma key instead of the custom. Now I can use both of these too. You can actually do both if you want, and that might have an advantage. But for now, let's just leave it at this. So now I have the IKEA background. Now I could turn my camera off if I just want to look at the background. I can also turn the IKEA background off if I want to focus in now on this one back here. So if I click this texture background, I can adjust its size. And there, now I have just a clear, plain Jane background, right? Now I like where that's at, so I'm going to hit the lock button on that one. Let's go back to the IKEA one. Now since the IKEA one is actually a layer above, I can just turn that on and toggle between the two because I'm literally turning one layer off and you're seeing the next layer down. Hopefully the layer concept makes sense. Okay, maybe you don't like the IKEA logo, so here's an opportunity to just drag it slightly larger. I still have a bedroom behind me. It's not my bedroom, but it looks pretty cool because it's IKEA. I like where that sits. I hit the lock button. Now, no matter what I click on here, I'm not going to drag anything by mistake, move anything around, and I'm good. All right, so that's it. You're ready to roll. The only last thing you have to do is you have to say start virtual camera. Once you start the virtual camera, OBS sends an output that looks like a camera to your software. So let's open up Zoom. All right, I'm going to sign in. All right. So here I am. I'm going to do settings. I am going to go to video. And you see my selection is not the Razer Kaio, because if I did that, of course it's not going to let me because it's already using the OBS. It would look different, but with the virtual camera, I have that background now for my Zoom meetings. So hopefully this tutorial has helped you to see how to do this, and I'm open to questions to help out. But that's the basic steps.